In my early roles, I followed the classic playbook. I was given tasks, I shipped them, and I waited for my next assignment. This was great, but I didn't have a lot of influence on what kind of work I was doing or even the impact of that work. In this video, I want to show you how I use data to break into the strategic conversations that were happening at different companies, increase my income, and became the go-to person the companies call to when they have to make tricky decisions. We'll talk about what happens when you're invisible at companies, common in junior roles, but even as you grow further into your career, it can still continue. We'll talk about some ideas of how data can actually be this super weapon to fast track your career growth, and what happens when you're the go-to expert in your company in your skill set. Because if you're not mastering data in your role, you're really leaving a huge amount of value on the table. Let's jump right in. And my early roles were classic junior roles. You come in, you're given very specific, well-detailed tasks, you complete them, and you move on to the next. But there was a barrier between me and where the strategic conversations were taking place. Why are we doing this specific initiative? Why are we going after this goal? I was very downstream. Now, this is kind of normal at a junior level, but of course, I wanted to break through into those strategic conversations and be in the room where it happens. So I started thinking about how you get there. And around this time, I read this fantastic book by Cal Newport, So Good They Can't Ignore You. The book has many great ideas, but his core idea is that you should be thinking and building rare and valuable skills. So I started looking at myself and I thought, okay, what are the rare and valuable skills that I could build? Maybe some of the things I'm really good at right now and that I can further improve into strengths. And data became one of those things. At the time, I had a background as a front-end developer, and I thought, what? Maybe the data element could be powerful as a way to break into those strategic conversations and further my career. So I took my background in front-end development and I started to mix it with data. I was always familiar with marketing teams. I found them really cool. And I thought, maybe I can even focus on this specific niche. I can say, hey, here's a marketing team. They likely need some technical help. And of course, we've seen how marketing has become quite technical over the years. And then maybe they need some help with data as well. So I started taking on projects, initially, Google Analytics, eventually tools like Mixpanel, Amplitude. And over time, I became quite good. I could build dashboards such as this one. This is an example dashboard, but it's a good example of what you can build once you master tools, right? You have all this context on what the dashboard is, the different charts, the breakdowns, and in a single place, you can give clarity to anyone who's going to rely on this kind of dashboard. So this is, a tool called Amplitude. There's many other tools I became to master and become familiar with. And a funny thing started to happen. Now, all of a sudden, people started coming to me with specific questions or requests, especially around the data portion here. And it wasn't just tools, right? I really leaned into it. So everything about how do you actually get data into the tools, what are tracking plans? A lot of the topics that we now cover in this YouTube channel, of course, came from this maybe 10-year period where I was really focused on how do you make data this rare and valuable skill? What does that actually look like on a day-to-day basis? What are companies willing to pay for? What's going to get yourself noticed within teams? Because there's, of course, lots of things you can do that are sort of cool and interesting that no one really cares about. Over time, beyond those initial requests, I started being invited into those actual strategic conversations. Now, when a team was going to decide, hey, what initiatives should we go after? They thought, hey, let's bring Ruben in because he has the data and he can talk about what the data is saying. He can answer questions for us on the spot around the data. So he should be in this conversation. And this is a great thing. All of a sudden, in my late 20s, early 30s, I can now be part of this really cool conversations, all because I have this skill set that I became known for, the data component within sort of the marketing and growth team units of a company. Now, you don't need to be a data scientist to be able to do this. There's actually different ways that anyone can do this in any given role. Let's look at a few examples. Now, we have the classic data roles, of course. We have to tackle those first. If you become a data analyst, you are likely going to be building dashboards such as the one I showed you earlier, right? You could be a data engineer. In that case, you'll be building something like this. Maybe tools like segment.com may become part of your repertoire. You may be working with like Airbytes or any kind of data pipeline solutions out there to move data from one place to another. You of course have a data scientist who's focused on building models and using, in this case, maybe a little bit of AI and statistics and pretty heavy coding to understand data at a higher level. Those are the classic data roles. But if you look at other roles, they ultimately have a data component these days. You may be a sales rep, for example, who becomes really familiar with how the data portion of your role works. So how does the CRM output data? Can you take the data, slice and dice it to find a high potential segments or high potential prospects, actually might be a better description. You can be a product manager, and I work with a lot of product managers who become familiar with tools like Amplitude, like Mixpanel, and they build their own reports. They use the data to inform their product roadmaps. So it's not just them making things out of the thin air. They're actually, relying on data to make those decisions. And it kind of shows when you look at the tickets and the logic and the documents for why a product should be going in a specific direction. And of course, you can just be some kind of internal consultant, or of course, external consultant. That is, you're being brought in on everything that might be related to data, right? You may be in sales, and you get to go talk to different sales teams because you're the one who understands the CRM really well, or you're the one who's able to kind of look at this data and understand it. So lots of different ways that data can help you stand out in any given role or field. And again, because of the way things have evolved, data has become quite common in almost every field out there. There's some kind of tool or something that's ingesting data, and not everybody's actually using it to its full capacity. Now, eventually, once this sort of reputation started to build and my career started to grow, I kind of moved into consultant. I ended up working with hundreds of companies. Here's my website of some of the logos I actually work with, and it became quite cool. People come in any company, and again, I was being brought in because of my data expertise. They were saying, hey, we need help with product analytics, or we need help with market analytics. We need to figure out this data warehouse portion. Occasionally, there were pretty tricky data challenges that had nothing to do with many of the tools that we cover in this channel, but it was a lot of product teams, a lot of marketing teams, and saying, hey, how can we make the most of data? And in fact, in many of those cases, I was being come in and trying to help individuals in those companies become sort of the data experts and say, hey, you're the product manager. How can you really use data to improve your role? Or you are the marketing manager. What data can help you improve your role? You are the customer success or the product marketing person. It became sort of a transfer of skills to try and say, hey, you guys should be looking at data to fast track your career. And here are some tools and some insights and principles that you can use to do that. And of course, the benefit on the income side was fantastic, right? You can sort of set your own projects, set your own terms, set who you want to work with. If I were to stay in inside companies, then you can have much more freedom over compensation and the different elements that go into compensation, perhaps a higher income or more flexibility. You want to work more remote jobs versus being in the office. This is sort of the end goal of just being really good at something, or being known as being really good at something. And this is where I think data can really help you get to that outcome. So no matter your role, again, you're in product, you're in sales, you're in marketing, or you're in actual dedicated data role, mastering data can really help you fast track your future. And it's a fantastic skill to learn even as we go into this world of AI. I think that being able to master data is going to be even more relevant. It's probably easier if you think about it, as you have tools that can help you do the heavy data analysis that perhaps you had to really learn Excel in the past. Now there's all these tools that can actually help you analyze data, but the conversion of data into insights and then insights into decisions, those are things that are most likely always going to be in high demand no matter what, and that's where you can really make your mark. Now that's everything I have for this video. Now if you want to fast track your career even more, there's another skill you should consider learning, and that is the ability to tell stories, or more specifically, to take the data that you're seeing wherever, a report, dashboard, a CSV, Excel, and convert it into a story that captivates others. They can walk into a meeting, tell this fantastic story with data, and then guide that to a specific decision or next steps. In the next video, I'll show you exactly how to do that and how to take any data, turn into this fantastic story, a very simple structure, not as complex as the movies or anything like that, but just simple enough that you can build it into a slide deck or a document or just a presentation, and use it to get even more influence in the meetings that you are involved with. So be sure to click that video that's up in the screen. My name is Ruben Ugarte, and I'll see you in the next video.